All right, guys, so I'm super excited about this session. So I've got someone who I've been really fortunate to work with for quite a while. I've got Curtis Klutts. He's regional director for PSSI, a really, really unique company. He oversees a good portion of the country for them. And so I guess, Curtis, tell everyone where you came from, what it's about, and we'll get the flies off your face, man.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we need some fly service here right now.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, by the way, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course.
I've been in the industry basically my whole life.
Yeah.
I'm a fourth generation pest guy.
Fourth generation?
Fourth generation.
Wow.
Started with my great-grandfather, and he had Klutts Pest Control, and it was passed down through the years. And of course, every kid wants to get away from the family business, right? So I went to college and kind of did my own thing, and now here I am. I'm back in it again. So
fourth generation.
Yes.
So that would be your grandfather?
Great-grandfather.
Great-grandfather started the company.
In the 1950s.
1950s?
Yes, sir.
So, can you imagine what pest control must have been like in the 1950s?
Kind of is probably a lot different than today.
I just remember, and you probably grew up thinking about this. Do you remember? I remember when I got into the business, it was pretty common for us because I got into the business in the late 2000s, and I remember running into these old pest control companies we go look at, and they had shelves full of chlorine still, which must have been on the shelf for 20 years at that point, right? So did you used to see this stuff as a kid?
Yeah, chlordane and all that. Yes.
Yeah.
I actually remember I was a kid when they outlawed it.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing at the time, my grandfather and my father, coming up complaining about it. The government's taking something else away from us kind of conversation, that pest guys will say sometimes. So yes, I remember that. And, of course they had some barrels of it that they still had, for a few years after that. Don't tell nobody. But yeah, I remember all those days. And even back then as a kid, the regulations and everything was different.
Yeah.
So, when I wasn't in school, I got to ride around with him in his truck and all that. Now, he didn't have me spraying pesticides, but, a lot of the homes built back then all had, crawl spaces.
Yeah.
And so if there was a possum or something like that under the house, guess who got to crawl under there? So I got taught at a young age how to handle snakes and possums and stuff like that. So it was made for a good experience.
So
terrifying at the time.
But. Yeah. So before I ask you this next question, is that I want to let you know something. So you said something in a statement. I don't even think you realized you said it. I think you might have just created your own hashtag for yourself. You referred to them as pest ads.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you literally said, pest ads, as if all of us have pest ads, right?
Right.
I guess you're a pest ad.
I am. I have 5 boys.
Yeah.
Yep, 5 boys.
They have any interest in the business?
They do. Yes. Yeah. So obviously, as you announced, I work for PSSI, but they're always pushing for me to start a Klutts Pest Control or something again, so that way they can take it over someday. So, I drive a Bronco, one of these new Broncos is my personal vehicle.
Yeah.
And my oldest boy, who's 14 now, he's getting close to driving age. He's like, that's going to be mine, and I'm going to use it to work pest. So, well, we'll see.
So I didn't share this with you. I didn't know about your son. So my son, he's 13, and my son wants a Bronco as well. All these kids want Broncos, and I could totally see my kid my kid watches Pest Daily, and so. He just thinks his dad's like a YouTube star, but he doesn't realize that was my job. And so he watches Pest Daily. And so if you ask my son today to talk about any of the courses, he probably can recite them because they learn so quickly. Yep. And so so maybe someday your kid's going to drive around a Klutts Pest Control Bronco. My kid will have one with a Pest Daily logo on the side.
And they'll be doing hashtag pest dads.
Yeah. So do you think your kid can outsell my kid?
I don't know. We should put it to the test. We should see.
Dude,
let them do a little role playing. And we can record it and see what happens.
I think your kid probably could outsell my kid because he's got brothers. My kid's an only child. And there's something about the development of killer instinct. If you got brothers, if you got bigger brothers around. So let me ask you this, man. So, you grew up in the pest business.
Correct.
You've done a lot of stuff in your career. You work for a large company now that's expanding like crazy. But, if you really boil it down, and you think about your career, what matters in the pest industry, if I said, hey, Curtis, if you could boil down what matters in the pest industry holistically, what would you say? Because I bet you've got a really good opinion about what matters.
I think it's your rapport with the customers.
Yeah.
Right. And I hate to say this. It's not the way I do business or people do business.
Yeah.
But in the industry for so many years, I have seen, even technicians, they'll have such a good rapport with their customer. You know, they may go on vacation or something, and the only way I ever find out that there's actually problems in the account is because they go on vacation. And I go look at the account and I'm like, God, there's roaches everywhere. How do we still have this customer? But it's because they have such a good rapport with the customer. They never call in. They never say anything because they just like seeing that technician and visiting with them and stuff like that. I've seen that several times over the years.
That's a really interesting point. So I can tell you this, in the years that we've been doing this, and you know, the people that are watching this right now, I bet they have tons of stories like that, right? Is in the years we've been doing this, I've never had somebody bring this up before. And so let's kind of talk about that a little bit. So do you think that people lose really large accounts because of that rapport?
I think so. Well, because on the flip side of that, you can say a pricing, right?
Yeah.
You know, all these companies nationwide. I don't know. You may know a statistic how many pest companies there are in the country. But,
a lot. Yeah.
You know, a lot, right?
Plus,
there you
plus
go.
or minus, yeah.
So, and then each one of those at least has one salesperson. The bigger companies have multiple per branch, right?
Yeah.
So you got to think every summer, all these people are out trying to steal your account. So if you have a good rapport, I don't feel like they're gonna change over $20 cheaper, right? But if they don't know who you are, you're just their technician, then they may switch for $20.
Yeah.
So I think it does pull a lot of weight.
Yeah, that's really it's interesting. So I think I see it from that perspective. I think the part that I really think about is like to your description, the customer never calls in, and again, unrelated to PSSI, but you guys work in major audited facilities. At least, I mean, you've done it all, right?
Yeah.
And so if you think about, let's say another company works in large facilities, and the facility completely gets out of control, right? How often, I wonder, do accounts get lost because they have such a good rapport with the technician and they never call the company, and then at some point they just stop?
Oh, it happens. Yes.
Probably,
I mean,
right?
Yeah, and well, your big audited accounts, you know, it's kind of industry wide. Your QA managers and stuff like that, they'll move jobs eventually, right?
Yeah.
So eventually that rapport, that friendship or camaraderie is going to leave.
Yeah.
The next person comes in and says, "What the hell's going on here?" Now you've lost the account. It's too late, right?
So you've been a leader in this business a long time. You've been in this business for generations, right? Like, I mean, if you were going to go teach your technicians how to do this, like if you were like, hey, technician A, I want you to build the best relationship with these customers. Like, do you have a perspective on that and how you would want to do it?
Yeah, I think it's just about, you know, each time you're there, I don't know. Are you talking about like when you're first trying to get the account?
No,
over the course of you being there.
Yeah, you're the technician. How do you build that rapport?
Well, you know, every time you're on site, you know, check in with them, talk to them, right? Don't be the guy that just walks the facility and checks your traps, sprays, dust, whatever you're doing for that day. Go spend a few minutes with them, right? Not necessarily when you're trying to sell it, but once you have it, get to know them, right? That's when it's a good time to talk about the kids' baseballs, games, and stuff like that, right? Get to know your customer. Because you should be doing that anyway, right? Let's face it. You should be checking with them before your service to make sure everything's okay, and then checking afterwards. But during that time, instead of just 100% business, hey, how'd your kid's baseball game go? You know, stuff like that. It really goes a long ways.
Yeah, I think it's something that I would love to see more companies put into like their service meetings and things like that. Yeah. And versus just like technical training or just sales training or whatever, they actually teach some of the more soft skills or human perspective and like help people like authentically care about others. Yes. You know, I think it's a huge thing in our industry, and some companies really press numbers and they forget about that component.
Right.
One of the companies that we worked with for a long time, a consulting client, is they had a rule, and they're actually a Texas company. And one of the rules that they had was that, and they were supposed to residential services, is that if a customer asks you to come in and have a cup of coffee with them, is that you have to do it. And so I used to fight this like crazy. I was like, well, dude, that's going to be inefficient. Why would that matter? Well, the reality is that what it boiled down to is that was part of their company culture. Mm-hmm. And so part of their company culture was, hey, if the technician comes up, you got the little old lady's house, and the little old lady's like, hey, would you like something? Can I get you water? Could you come in for a second and grab a coffee? Is they wanted their technicians to do it. And when I spoke to the CEO about it originally, I was like, dude, this creates a lot of inefficiency. He goes, you're right. Except what it is, it's part of our company, it's our culture. And they do that. And so they might have days where, you know, a technician might have a target of $1,200 or $1,500 a day. and they might have a $600 day, and that's actually accepted by the ownership if it related to doing this for a customer. Pretty interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
That's a Texas company, which I thought was cool, you know?
Yeah, that happens a lot in Texas.
I feel like it does. I feel like it does.
I've seen that as a kid. I remember one time riding with my dad.
Yep.
And he went, and I'm not going to say any names because this company actually still exists, but ultimately is a construction company, but they're also property management. They would build something like this facility, but then after they built it, they would manage it.
Sure.
Right? And so he was going to have lunch with this guy, and I'll just say John was his first name. I won't say the last name because the last name's the name of the company.
Oh, I know John. I'm just kidding.
You might. He's built a lot of stuff around like the North Texas, Dallas area.
Oh,
so,
nice.
I mean, they're a big company. So people would know who they are. But yeah, I remember as a kid, obviously I didn't do any drinking, but they were meeting in his office, and it was about 11, almost 12 o'clock lunchtime. And he said, let's go out and have a drink, have some lunch. And he did. Him and my dad drank a few beers. He got the business, right? Got all his, and I remember afterwards, that's what my dad said. He said, somebody offers you a drink or something like that, you take it. So, but it goes a long way. It helps build that rapport.
It does. It's interesting. So earlier today, obviously you're in town. We're doing some really cool stuff for PSSI right now, but earlier today we got into a big discussion, and I loved the discussion. And I think it's really important that we talk about this.
Yeah.
And so, obviously we work together, so you know what our companies do. Everyone out that watches this knows what our companies do. So, we're building complex commercial sales processes, right? And as part of that process, we got into this whole discussion around like rapport building. And so you and I talked about the fact that like there's a structure around it, which I'm a believer in, but then you brought up another point and I thought it was really great. And you actually referred back to like walking into the chicken factory. And I think that you nailed it. And so like, let's talk about the kicking up the boots, hanging out with the guys in the plant. Like, let's talk about how to build rapport that way. Cause I think that you really nailed that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's about, for people that have done this a long time.
Yep.
I'm not suggesting somebody brand new do it, but it's almost like a sixth sense. Like you read the room, right? Yeah. There's times where you do walk in and it's all about structure. They want to know numbers. They want to know exactly what you're doing. And then there's other times that you walk into a chicken plant out in the middle of East Texas somewhere, just a bunch of good old boys, nothing wrong with that. I got on my boots. We can kick them back anytime, right?
Yep.
But then there's times where they don't care about that. They know they need the pest program. They just want to get to know you and make sure you're going to fit in with their culture. And that's more of a culture thing, right? Where you do want to kick your boots back and, go have a drink with them, go to lunch with them, and then they sign paperwork and you may not even discuss pest because they trust you now.
One of the discussions we had earlier today was the fact that I think for someone like you, who is from a technical standpoint as savvy as they come, is that if you ever ran into a question, you could answer it, right? And so there's almost like this deeper professional credibility when you walk in the door. And so do you think if someone was a new sales rep, and let's say that they're from the same area, they know the same people, and do you think that person could potentially do the same thing? Or do you think that they have to have the technical skill set behind them?
If it's their personality, I think they could. I mean, don't go in and be a fake, right?
Yep.
I mean, because most of those guys, especially whether they're the technical side or the good old boy, they've probably worked in that facility 10, 20, 30. I've seen some 40-year veterans, right? And so they're going to know if you're BSing them, right? They're going to know if you're fake. So just really, it's all about going in and being yourself, right? Take your knowledge, take your training, and be yourself. Yeah. Don't try to be me. Don't try to be Seth. Be yourself.
Yep.
Take Pest Daily's knowledge, take Seth's knowledge, take Curtis's knowledge, and make it your own. Yep. That's really what it's about.
I would agree with you, and I would tell you, and I know I brought up this briefly, is like, I think it's the hardest thing to teach somebody. And the reason I think it's super hard is because sometimes people can potentially rely on that so much that they forget that they're actually in a sales call, right?
Yep.
And so they become a friend and they forget to do the deal.
Yes.
And so I've seen that a lot. And I think I think what it is, and I think what it is the fact that people get that hit of endorphin rush that they've just made a friend versus getting a close, and we've all probably been there. I mean, I've been there. I'm sure you've been there.
Yeah.
Like we've all been there,
I agree with that. That's why I said I don't really recommend it for someone new.
Yeah.
Unless that's just your personality, but you do have to remember to circle back around and close the deal, right? If I'm going in and kicking up my boots at the end of our drink or whiskey or whatever we're drinking, I'm going to slide it over to you and say, all right, let's get the deal done. Right? But I do know, and we had this discussion earlier, right? I mean, I have seen guys that I call them, they're just not closers, right? But it may just be, I'm not sitting at every conversation they have, but it may be that they're falling into this trap and they're becoming buddies. And so that makes it where they don't want to ask for the business. So I can definitely see that as a problem.
You know, the funny thing is, and because we're on Session with Seth, we can say whatever the heck we want, is as you're saying it, what I'm thinking about is like back in the day, how I would go out and whatever products we're selling at the time, we would go out and just clean up all these people that like that the sales rep that would go in ahead of time and be friendly. And we just go in and clean up all the deals because the sales rep would get fired or whatever. And I just remember going, those guys are like fluffers. They're like the fluffer. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Make them comfortable, make them friendly.
Yeah.
And then, but somebody's got to come in and close the deal.
For sure, right?
Yeah.
For sure.
So
I think you could close the deal after the fluffer, don't you?
I'm just messing with you, man. Easy.
So think about this. So the people who are going to be watching this are people from all over our industry, right?
Yep.
So you've got people that are brand new getting into the truck, guys that are running large companies, guys that are operating highly corporate companies like you guys. I mean, so what would be some advice that you'd want to give to like a broad audience where if they reached out to you and they're like, hey, Curtis, hey, help me here. Like what would be a broad piece of advice that you're like, hey, this would help everyone? Super hard question.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say, you know, if you're new to it, you know, obviously, you know, follow the script, so to speak, right? Follow the procedure. Learn from stuff like Pest Daily, right? Don't go in there on day one and just try to be their buddy. Right. But you do want to build that rapport as well. Right.
Yeah.
So you got to find your balance. But I do think ultimately, if you're new in the industry, new to the business, you do need to follow a structure or you're never going to go anywhere. And you're going to end up being the guy that just has a bunch of buddies and never accomplish anything. So that will come with time. Right. Once you really get in there and learn really what you're doing, then you can move further into that business. I would say for the time being, do the procedure, get the business, and then do, like I said, when you're actually there doing the service, gain your rapport that way.
I think it's great. So I've got one last question for you. You can ask me whatever you want since we're here. And it can be as crazy as you want, by the way. So one last question for you is that, what was your great-grandfather's name?
Jesse Wright Klutts.
Jesse Wright Klutts?
Yeah, and I say that because my great-grandfather was Jesse Wright Klutts, and then his son was also Jesse Klutts. So that's how we differentiated them. Yeah.
So if your great-grandfather was out here today, what would he be thinking about you being in the business?
He'd probably say you're crazy as hell.
He probably would, right?
Yeah. He probably would. Yeah. I mean, he lived, what was he, 93 years old when he passed?
Wow.
So he did live a long time for being around chemicals and especially some strong ones back in the day, right? But I remember he used to tell me as a kid, you know, you go over there, back then it was a different time, right? You go over there and have a little bowl of butterscotches and all that, right?
Yeah.
And, but he would always say, you know, stay away from it because my blood is poison, you know, and stuff like that. So, yeah, he'd probably say I'm crazy. Yeah. But back then it was different too, because I mean, we had a family, or they had a family business. I was a little kid. And, but it's not like they were millionaires or anything, right?
No.
So the pest industry was completely different, you know, and you couldn't build the contracts and everything like you can these days. It's different now. You can take a company and become $1 million company in under a year if you do it right? Back then you couldn't. It was different because all the technology was different, right? You couldn't just get on the internet and email somebody and stuff. So yeah, times have changed though too. So.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like it's interesting to bring it up because pest control years ago was take toxic product, kill things forever, right? And then, and that's what it was. That was the exterminator business, right? And it's like, it's evolved and became subscription modeling and all these things. And I mean, you're right. Like, I mean, you know, a lot of these generational companies and a lot of these people are part of our ecosystem and network. And the guys are second, third generation heads of companies. And like the companies never really tended to like accelerate until the ones at like the third generation or, you know what I mean? And they never fourth generation, or they never got there to where it became a modern company. I think the business has just changed tremendously. You know, it really has. And I mean, but yeah, you're right. Like today, pest control guys, like I mean, dude, these companies are, these companies, people are making a lot of money now. I mean, technicians are making a lot of money. The heads of companies are making a lot of money. Like people are making a lot of money now, which back in the day, it wasn't like that, you know, it really wasn't.
No, you can make a living, but you know, unless you were one of the big boys, you know, it's hard to expand, right? But I think a lot of that was just the communication, right? I mean, because again, we had landline phones.
Yeah.
Right? No internet, nothing like that. Right?
Yep.
Pagers came along finally.
Yep.
So just, if you were just a family, 1-2-man show, you only got business in your driving area, wherever you stopped and actually talked to somebody, right? So again, that rapport. I'm just old school, right?
Yeah. 100%.
I mean, you couldn't look people up online. You couldn't hit them up on LinkedIn or Facebook.
Didn't even know how to find the exterminator.
Right. It's just that, you had the yellow pages, right? But nowadays, you could get on there and you could find the head of whatever company you want to find, and shoot them a message on LinkedIn, see if they're interested in talking to you.
Yep.
You couldn't do that before.
And you do it all the time.
Right. So it's just a different ball game now. So.
All right, man. So here's your chance. You can ask me anything you want to ask me.
What's in your drink?
So I only drink one thing. So I drink water and I drink black cold brew.
Why black cold brew?
Have you ever drank a black cold brew?
No.
Well, so I like cold brew because I'm a purist. Mm-hmm. And so making cold brew, you never heat the coffee up. And the way that they typically make it takes, let's just say, a day to make. Mm-hmm. And so one of my hobbies is I actually make my own cold brew, and I actually have a cold brew machines. One of them takes me 3 days to make 1 cup of coffee. And
holy cow.
Yeah.
That's patience right there.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I don't have a lot of hobbies, but it's one that I really, really enjoy. Wow. And so if you ask the team, most of the teams had cold brew in my house. And the part that I like about it the best is, let's say we're working at my house or whatever, and everyone drinks cold brew. Dude, everyone is so fired up all day. It's like the energy of they're raining energy out of the sky on everybody, because we make it super strong.
Nice. Good. That's good. That's kind of against the grain. Everybody wants instant satisfaction these days.
Oh yeah.
Not too many people would say they have the patience to wait 3 days for it. Obviously, you probably got it continuously going, so you're not waiting 3 days. But
yeah, you can't drink. So you can't have a coffee. You can't have a 3-day brew coffee every day. It's too strong, man. If I drink the 3-day brew coffee, let's just put it this way, is we're ready to make 100 past daily videos that day.
Nice. So I got to try it, because I've been through 3 cups of coffee and an energy drink today. So
yeah, how did you like that Past Daily energy drink?
It was awesome. He's got an energy drink. I don't know if y'all knew that or not, but I didn't know until today, but it's good.
Yeah, we released those last January at our conference last year, a conference called Energy. So the Pest Daily drink is called Energy, right? And so we launched it at our conference.
Nice.
And so we travel around to give away the conferences, but they taste awesome.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's good. Definitely good. Recommend, if you see them, come grab one.
That's cool. So what else? Any other questions for me? You want to make it a wrap?
No, let's make it a wrap, man. Dude, I appreciate you having me again,
guys. So Curtis does an awesome job. We appreciate you guys joining us. And hey man, I really appreciate you, man, coming out here. Thank you, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Take care, man.